Pleasant good day, everyone, and wherever you are watching this video, welcome again to another in the series where we at the case SIG of AERA sharing with all of us and our future, present and future researchers, just tips and ideas and good stuff of how to go about doing your research. Today, I have with me Matthew. I'm going to ask you, Matthew, to go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself and who you are.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I would like to say thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity. I am Oluseyi Matthew Odebiyi, and I go by Matthew. I am currently an assistant professor at the Department of Teacher Development at St. Cloud State University here in Minnesota. And I'm a member of the case SIG, the current secretary treasurer for the SIG. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to jump right into it. And so tell us about your research. Tell us about your research.
Thank you. Currently, I have two strands of research. One of them focusing on African continent, more and at the same time doing more of a comparative study with what is going on in the Western world. In this first strand, I am looking at what I call teacher candidates' epistemic beliefs about teaching and learning. Basically, what I'm exploring is to consider how teacher candidates from African continent, especially starting from Nigeria as a case, how they form the notion and conception of learning and knowing. What does it mean to know? What does it mean to learn within the realm of our teaching? So within this frame, I'm using the quantitative approach to consider if this kind of factor structure that we find in Western world applies to teacher candidate in African context, and it's becoming much more interesting. And that is what I'm working on now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good stuff. So that sounds very interesting. And looking at the whole idea of African continent and looking at the Western world, you know, over where we are in the US, and of course, I'm in Canada. What methods are you using for this particular work? Tell me about your methods.
Now, I consider this work more of an exploratory research, because the idea behind this research is to start looking at different evidence that we have available to actually start from the basic to see whether they apply first. And to achieve this goal, I started using exploratory factor analysis, because my goal in this study is to first describe rather than do any form of a prediction. I intend to describe what it is, that the nature of the conception of knowledge and knowing, what the nature looks like for an African continent sample. And then to achieve this, I realized that there's just a need to backtrack a little bit to consider, since I am looking at measuring these factor structure, I better go back and try to look at, number one, I don't want to use Western instrument as it is, neither do I want to adapt. So I chose to use exploratory factor analysis to first describe the factor structure, and at the same time, being able to establish what that factor structure look like. Then that will give us more understanding of, okay, if we know what it is, then we can have more confidence in trying to find out whether they relate to other components of teaching and learning. So I'm, in a nutshell, I'm using quantitative approach, specifically exploratory factor analysis.
Thank you so much. I always, because so many novice and student researchers and younger researchers are coming up, I love to always underline vocabulary. That's just a habit of mine. And I heard, of course, quantitative. I heard the word predict. those are, powerful words. And I love the word description or descript, and then I heard exploratory. And I remember when I did research years ago myself, when I started my thesis, the idea of exploratory research, trying to find out, trying to describe before we predict. And that is something powerful that I think a lot of novice and young researchers need to hear. And so thank you for that. I want to go, research is a journey. I personally call research a journey. And so when a person's hear your journey, they go, wow, oh, well, that's a lot. That's a lot. But let me ask a question. Describe the process of getting your research underway, the early part of research. Share with all the persons listening, especially our new and upcoming researchers, what are the considerations you have when starting or embarking on your research?
Thank you, Andrew. I think it has been my idea and my practice to start thinking about, when I read any research work, to start thinking about what are people not talking about. Even when I write my own research article and paper, I start thinking about what is it that I'm not talking about. Mm-hmm. And again, that forms the foundation of this idea of exploring the epistemic beliefs of African context. In research, I realized that many of the assumptions we make about how people know and how people learn kind of, kind of exclude a larger population of people. So within this process, I started by thinking, what are people not talking about? Which I found to be that in the realm of quantitative study, we have little to nothing evidence on epistemic beliefs for African context. So within that, I started by exploring this idea, noticing them, and looking at more literature to actually see what is in there. Great work has been done with respect to theorizing. We have a good research literature in that line. And to embark on this idea, I started by noting them down, like I said, exploring the literature, and then I wrote the IRB for it. And again, I consider the fact that I am not resident currently in Nigeria, so I'm shoveling between here and Nigeria. So I started looking for some money to actually help for the to help with the research, which my colleagues and I got some amount of those to do the research. And then we reach out to our colleagues in Nigeria. I have personal and professional connection in Nigeria precisely, and we started from there, borrowing from the idea that the smaller and the simpler, the better. So after the IRB, we apply for the fund. We get some money to do the research. We reach out to our colleagues out there. It was a little bit challenging at some point to actually get the needed collaboration. And with some professional connection, we're able to get in the field, collect data, and it's been wonderful and awesome from there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. You know, one of those things that happens a lot, and one of those things that happens a lot when it comes to research is, and I see a lot of, my research students will talk about it, is that not realizing that research takes time and research is a process. I hear you talking about reaching back to Nigeria. I hear you talking about connections. I hear you talking about collaboration, funding, starting small, the entire process. And I think that is so important that we do understand as researchers, and to giving advice that research is a process, and it may mean going back to come forward to all that. So one of the things is that I have as students, and I think some of the students I have who struggle with, is that they want to be done now and they want to skip a process so they could get it done because it's so much work, and that doesn't happen in research. I'm sure you experience it. So can you share with me two major challenges that you have faced. Share with me, share with the audience, share with the research students who are going to be watching this video, share with upcoming researchers. 2 challenges you have faced when going to research, not only this project, but in general. And what advice do you have for persons? Two challenges, and what advice do you have for us?
Thank you. I will put those challenges into overarching statement. And in fact, you've touched on one of them, which I have kind of mentioned earlier, is the notion of collaboration. Because I would say that the first phase of the research took 2 years to complete, and it's still ongoing. So total now we're looking at about, this is the 4th year on that one study, because then when we did the first exploratory factor, when I did the first exploratory factor analysis, we found some things that needs clarification. We had to like do it again, revise many of the questions and stuff, to do it again to make sure that we are not falling into the same concern that we identified earlier on. Because if we say this is the factor structure that identified this group of people, we want to at least to some extent be certain that that is what it is. And again, that's number one, finding finding people who are really interested in collaborating, and at the same time working with sharing our concern as per do not let us just do predictive study. What we are predicting, what we are even using to measure this prediction, is not measuring what it is, because I have the experience of both contexts now. And again, based on my expertise, I can boldly say that to some extent I could see some discrepancies in how some of these things are described. So having this buy-in to say, oh, instead of you starting from the basic, why can't we just collect this data and predict, and we can use this robust design? We can just like, no, just wait a minute. That was actually the first problem we're trying to solve. The first problem is that let's start by describing ours. And again, we can look at other models that are there to be able to then compare and see how are they different? How do they look alike? And then, having this kind of like-minded collaborators that are willing to start from the basic rather than just, jump the gun and go ahead was a challenge. The second challenge was actually related to the notion of what we call basic, what we call participant access. Access to participant was kind of challenging in that I do not mean having contact with them. I think actually I came up with this idea of participant access after this my experience with this particular study. It is the fact that some basic things, just like making copy, was I never really considered it a challenge, but it happened to become a challenge, because we say, okay, we want this so number. So sometimes we have to wait to say, hey, for you to be able to do this so number, only this number of individual copiers or these people who are doing copying stuff can do them. So we have to wait, and that is like number of days counting on us right there. Another thing we found as per participant access is the fact that it seems some participants have already what I call personal truth about how research and survey is done. So there's some of them seems to be bringing that idea, because we were like, when, for example, in one of the survey, I went in there because I went to Nigeria myself as well at some point to say, hey, I want this thing done as correctly as I could, not to dictate for them, but at least to kind of have an idea of how can we work together to make sure this thing works. We found many participants in a hurry, just wanting to just wanting to tick and think. I think we had to condemn some of those when we observed those things, and we made a note to say, when this happened, we don't want that. So it becomes, because like I said, my initial concern is the fact that even though we know each study we have its own limitation, I want to do my best to make sure that whatever I'm saying represents your thought, whatever I'm saying, especially a construct that is as complex as epistemic beliefs. It poses a lot of challenges because people are not used to even measuring that quantitatively. So those are the key two overarching concern, but we were able to work things around, and we all benefit from the process.
No. Thank you so much. And you know what? I love how you shared that. It's very, I love the honesty, you sharing, because the purpose of these videos is to give listeners, give the persons who are viewing, not just about your research, but the lessons taken from your work.
Right.
That is the power.
Right.
And I'm hearing you talking about when something is not done properly. And it is not sufficient to just say, well, it was rushed, but to make sure that you realize this kind of information is not what we need. We need it to be done properly. Process is a thing that I think a lot of younger researchers, upcoming scholars are struggling with, is that there's no shortcut. There are no shortcuts. The process has to be done. And so I really love how you talk about that. And so we're going to wrap this up. It's a wonderful chat. We're going to wrap this up. And I want you to, what advice would you give to novice researchers or persons considering embarking on research in terms of managing the process? You now have been through the process. You're a professor yourself in the area. What advice do you give to novice researchers about embarking on research?
Again, thank you for asking that question. It sounds simple, but it's always a challenging question to kind of say that, oh, this is what I think about this topic, but this is how I will put it. I think different people will approach the notion of research and researching differently. Then I will speak from my own personal experience. I think one of the things that I have learned, and I will advise our colleagues and any other researchers that might want to do research in African context, and especially even comparative study, is the fact that we have to understand the context, how things work in the context. Of course, starting up, I have experience in different African contexts. And at the same time, my experience in the United States is kind of making the whole thing, simple thing, more complex. So I think knowing the context is very important, because I think I was able to solve many of the little challenges of this is the way research is done. This is how we distribute simple things as simple as questionnaire becomes more of like, no, what about we do it this way? Number one, knowing the context, and again, singing African research, one of our greatest collaborators. They have a lot of resources they can offer, a lot of ideas they can contribute, and that will really help the process. And finally, one of the things I will also mention is the fact that I have made it my own mantra now to keep it simple, keep everything simple. Not to say that keep the idea simple, or not to say that keep your analysis simple. However you want to describe the notion of simple, like, don't let us complicate things. Sometimes the quest to kind of go this big and, I want to do these things that, make me popular or something, might not even work sometimes. I think we have to keep it simple and see it as a process, and we can add to whatever knowledge we've gained as we go. For now, those are the two basic things, and I think I will encourage other researchers too to reach out to African scholars. Their willingness to help really amazes me, and the level of capacity that is right there in African context is so awesome. I mean, many of the analysis we talk about, many of the processes we talk about, in fact, getting the notion of participant access that I talked about, actually, they help me solve the problem pretty quicker than I thought. So they are bigger assets to actually make the research more feasible. And overall, I am happy that this research endeavor really helps in making the less feasible more feasible. and the fact that we are able to kind of starting to take us evidence from African context more seriously, and again bringing it into the more mainstream of scholarly context. Especially the work has been presented more, different part of the work has been presented in AERA, NCSS, and even our SIG, and different publications from it. So it has this larger pool of support. Researchers want to know more about it, but at the same time, the question, one thing I've learned has become the question of credibility. So we want to make sure, that's what I mean by keep it simple.
Yes.
If it is simple enough and it's credible, the audience are there, the researchers are willing to read the work, to take a look at the work. And again, African context is also a wonderful place to do research. Thank you for now. I have a lot to share, but I think for now, those are the things that came to mind. And I'm adding to my knowledge on those things as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I love how you said making the invisible more visible. That's the power of research. Giving that voice, bringing that voice, and many of us, like myself, who work in qualitative research, that's the genuine intent, is to make the invisible more visible, bring those voices that are sometimes excluded and outside into these spaces. And the credibility is key. And I love what you said, keep it simple. Simple doesn't mean watered down. Simple means such in such a way that it's so important to bring all of that over to this side, so to speak, son. Thank you so much, and I just want to underline again, you talk about collaboration. That is key. So thank you. And I hope to hear more about your work. I definitely hope to hear about your work at AERA and other conferences. Thank you so much, Matthew. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. Appreciate it. Thank you.